It's 11 o'clock, and I'm going to call the meeting of the Electric Utility Board to order, please. And our first order of business is public comment. Do we have someone today? I think we do. Yes. If you just come up, and we're glad to have you.
For sure. Good morning, you guys. Sorry, my voice is really big.
Oh, that's
didn't
good.
realize it. My name is Blake Vineyard. I am the new West Texas Deputy Regional Director for Senator Cruz. I'm actually based right here in Lubbock. I grew up in Lubbock my entire life, went to school out at Roosevelt High School in East Lubbock County, and I'm really, really excited to be here, excited to represent the city of Lubbock and hear some of y'all's praises, good things that are happening, and some of y'all's concerns that I might be able to write down and send back to Senator Cruz's office. But on behalf of Senator Cruz, I just want to say thank y'all very much for everything y'all do for the citizens here in Lubbock. If it wasn't for strong city councils, there's no way that Lubbock would be able to continue to grow and thrive at the level that it's able to. So sincerely, thank y'all for all that y'all do.
Thank you, Blake. We're glad to have you, and we certainly will call on you if we need some help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Uh-huh.
I'd like to call the Lubbock City Council meeting to order on today's date, the 18th of July, 2023 at 11 o'clock and 30 seconds. Thank you.
Great. And we're always so glad to have our city council members here, and certainly the city manager and the CFO and the chief legal counsel. And welcome, Mr. Odom. Is there anybody else on public comment? If not, we will go into executive session. We will recess and go into executive session on the second floor. Is that correct? Second floor. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, the City
Yes.
Council will hold an executive session today for the purpose of consulting with the city staff regarding competitive matters of the public power utilities under Section 551.086 of the Texas Government Code, and pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers, and hold consultation with attorney under Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, and personal matters under Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code. Thank you so much.
You did it right, Councilwoman Patterson. We will also recess in accordance with VTCA Government Code 551.086 on competitive matters of LP&L, VTCA Government Code 551.071 seeking advice of and consultation with LPL attorneys on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Chapter 551 of the Government Code, and seeking advice of its attorneys about pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offers. And 3, VTCA Government Code 551.074 to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, and or duties of a public officer or employee. The Director of Electric Utilities, now known as Chief Administration Officer, the Chief and General Counsel. It is 11:04. We're now in executive session. Good afternoon. It is now 12:36. This one says different than my phone does. 12:37, and we're back at executives in open session. The first order of business is to approve the minutes from the regular Electric Utility Board meeting on June 20th, July 6th, and the special meeting on July 10th. Are there any corrections or additions to any of those?
So moved.
I have corrections on July 6th. I think it's page 22. On the resolution, that's page 22 on the resolution. We made changes to that. I did not see the resolution attached. Beatrice, is the resolution attached? I did not see it.
The resolution was not attached to the minutes. We haven't traditionally done that with the resolution as it was revised prior to the meeting. It was the one presented at the meeting and is on file with the city secretary.
Right, but could we get that resolution, because the resolution was not, it was interim general counsel, we had Carolyn Shellman's name in it, is if you'll recall.
Right.
So we revised that, so we need to revise the minutes that show her from the law firm, but it was for the interim counsel for Carolyn Shellman from the law firm, and then just the resolution that we sent to the city secretary.
And it has all that.
We can amend that, we can attach that.
We can attach it to the minutes if you
Yeah, that would be great. So, just with that one change, Mr. Odom, is there a second to his?
Yeah, I'll make a motion with that change.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? There's a second with Gonzalo. All those in favor, those approving those minutes with those revisions, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Joel, looks like you're on first base.
All right, I'll bring us safely home. Everybody wants to go home safe. You'll notice conspicuously missing from this month's board package is what we call the Luke's report. We're materially finished, substantially done with those projects that are related to bringing the 30% of the customers into ERCOT. We're in kind of a closeout and cleanup mode now with most of those. So we talked about maybe giving that one a break. We can bring it in again. There's still some things that need to be done, but I don't know that it's worthy of this board's attention on an every month basis. So we talked about maybe giving this one a break in favor of Matt being able to talk about the legislative agenda of the session that just ended, or hopefully will end sometime. Next month, I want to start bringing to the board's attention a checklist of sorts. So the resolution that this board and the city council passed to opt in to retail competition has a bunch of stipulations in it. And I want to make sure that these stipulations stay front and center with the board and council so that we all understand where we're at in the progress of getting through all these things. To give you a classic example, we have to have the total of all of our load has to be fully integrated into ERCOT for a minimum period of 60 days. So there's caveats like that throughout this resolution that we need to make sure that we're meeting so that when it does come time to enter retail competition, and it still looks like next spring is a pretty good time frame for it, we need to have all these things done and make sure that we've met all the requirements in the resolution itself, the irrevocable resolution. So we will start reporting on that, and we'll include it in the board packet as well on a going forward basis so everybody can see where we're at.
That's in the August board package. You'll have that.
I'm sorry?
In the August board packet.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We have 100% completed our flight testing with the people that were able to do flight testing. There were some organizations that couldn't get to where we needed them to be, which was okay. It's a high likelihood they'll get to try again in the fall. And so it's not like they just don't have a chance to compete in Lubbock. But we still had, Clint, was it 85? It was 85 participants in the flight testing, and that is all done. Included in your board packet and presentation today is going to be our delivery service rates going forward and the terms and conditions of doing business between us and the retail electric providers. Harvey's going to talk about that, I believe. And one of the things that we have to do is an outcropping of that. Once it's approved through City Council, then we have these application sheets where we can actually start signing up REPs. And then we can start putting names on the website so that people can then get a sense of who the legitimate players are and maybe try to help us minimize scams and different things like that. So that's they're going to be another major step for us to be able to get those things done, but we look forward to the approval of the delivery service rates today and then with City Council next week. Next week also is the Texas Public Power Agency Association, annual conference. And Chair, I believe you're attending?
That's correct. In
Do we-
San Antonio, I believe Monday.
San Antonio. Mm-hmm. I got to go down. I have to go down to San Antonio on Sunday because there's a board meeting on Monday morning for me. But I'll be there for the conference and come back Wednesday afternoon. Did we have any other board members that were going to be able to go? Do you know?
I don't think so. I think
No?
I'm the only
Okay.
one.
We got a few folks from staff. It's a really great event. I'm always looking forward to networking and seeing what other utilities and other cities are doing that we can learn from, and they can learn from us. Everybody looks at us a little bit leery because we're getting into retail competition, and that's new. But at the same time, we're doing some really cool stuff just to keep the system up and running too. Our staff is doing a great job. With that said, Madam Chair, let's call up Casey. Let her step her through the finances. Any questions or?
Just one question. You said that there's 85 that have completed the flight testing. And then the next step is they will fill out that application that meet the criteria that we need, correct?
If they intend to participate in the market in Lubbock, they're going to have to sign that agreement, and that's when we're going to start seeing who the players are. Almost certainly, we're not going to have 85. I'm anticipating 25 to 30, something like that.
Okay. Is that
Yeah.
what, do we know how many participants they have, like in the Midland, Odessa,
It's about that.
around in the 30-ish range?
Mm-hmm.
Does any board member have any other questions of Mr. Ivy, our Chief Administrative Officer? Thank you, Joe.
Thank you all.
Casey, are you next on financial?
I am.
And what page is that?
We'll start on page 53.
73?
53 will be the balance sheet. Just let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so for May, if we look at our balance sheet for our cash, you can see we have an increase of $11.1 million since April. If you go over to our cash flows, you can see that in our operating activities, we had a positive cash flow of $9.6 million. In our financing activities, we had a negative cash flow of $4.6 million. That's going to be due to our CIP spending, and $3.8 million of that will be refunded by bonds in June. And then in our net cash for financing activities, we see that we have a positive cash flow for bond refunding for April CIP spending. You can see that there is an increase in May to our liabilities, and that's mainly going to be due to our increase we had in our over-collected position from April to May. We do still see a small increase in our net position of $201,000, and that brings us to a total increase of $8.5 million since year end. Looking at our financial ratios, you can see our days cash on hand has gone up from 73 to 102. So I did explain to y'all last month that we're going to see that dip in April when we make a bond payment, and then we'll start seeing it go back up in May. So you can see that we're back above the 90-day goal. In our operating ratio, we do see a small increase from 8.54 to 8.58, and that's going to be due to we had a slight increase in our operating expenses from April to May. And then in our current ratio, you can see there is a decrease from 2.84 to 2.61. That's going to be due to our over-collected position increasing our liabilities. Moving on to our budget to actuals. You can see that we're still coming under budget for our purchase, power, and our charges for services. Those are both sitting at 60%. Right now, we should be about 67% of budget. And then in our departmental expenses, we're coming under budget still at 56%. We're still right at budget for our ERCOT hold harmless payment and our TCOS revenue. And then our operating income is 5% over budget right now at 72%. Does anybody have any questions for me? No? All right, y'all have a good day.
I'm going to move number 9 later, and number 10, is that you, Butch? Or you get number 10, number 10? Okay, for the APP National Conference that you went to.
Yes, Chair. Let me briefly report on the American Public Power Association meeting I attended last month. APPA is the voice of the not-for-profit, community-owned utilities in the United States, and they promote public power and helping our communities that have these utilities to deliver superior services. So they have a national conference each year that provides their members with opportunities for education, for networking, and it's a very well organized and executed conference. I was able to attend about 10 one-hour sessions, and those topics range from promoting organizational excellence, building pride in our public service, and the new global paradigm for natural gas and strategic planning, and then one that really interested me was strategic planning that sticks. So I met several people in our industry, a lot of peers, a lot of people that provide services to us through consulting agencies as well as governmental agencies. I also got to meet some of the Tenasca folks, which we have mentioned their name here before in this session. But I must say the added bonus that I had was getting to know Clint Gardner and Matt Rose on a more intimate level, and I hope they can say the same about me. So thank you, LP&L, for allowing me to attend that. I thoroughly enjoyed it and came away with a lot more information, education, and a appreciation of what we do here at the LP&L.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Butch. Clint, do you want to add anything to that?
Just
Any
very little
secrets
to
you want
that.
Share with us.
Well, I'm not going to tell you everything Butch did, but no. What he said, I agree with. It's just one of the biggest things you get out of these meetings is the networking that you get to do at the meetings, as you all know, and it was invaluable to get to know some of these people that have the same positions that we do at the municipals and other utilities, and just going through the training. And then, of course, getting to know Butch was excellent. I think that's huge, is when you get off with someone and just see who they really are as a person, and you get to see how valuable they are to not only just you as a friend, but also as an asset to Lubbock Power and Light. But we thank you all for what you do, and we appreciate you letting us go to this and attend the trainings. Trainings were excellent, and can't say anything better than what Butch said. So anyway, thank you for letting us go. It was a really good meeting.
Thank you for attending for us. Does anybody have any questions of Butch or Clint? If not, we'll go on to item number 11. And Harvey, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Yes, ma'am.
This is a delivery service tariff.
This is yes, correct. This is the delivery service tariff that I'm going to present. Back on April 10th, staff brought before the Electric Utility Board our delivery rates that the board approved. Those rates are going to be included in this tariff. There is no change to those rates. They're the same rates that you approved. The only thing that we did add is we did not have lighting rates in those, and that's really just applicable to the city. We do have those rates available in that tariff. So there's no change to the delivery tariff, the rate component that we brought before the board. But what we bring in before the board today is going to be the complete tariff, and that gives all the terms, the conditions, the applicability of the rates, how those rates are played out. It also gives the policies about those rates. It gives the construction charges for those rates. So it's a very complete document. I hate to say in the course of doing things, coming up with the rates is relatively easy compared to having to recraft this entire document to fit a completely new way that we're looking at it. We're going from a vertically integrated utility from generation to a bill collection and customer service and meter reading to being the poles and wires company. And that's what this new tariff has to reflect, all of that change. You get probably one chance in your career maybe to do that. Usually you don't. I've been in the electric utility industry for 30 years. It's the first time actually it's what drew me here, because I was like, I would love to be a part of that. And so I got a chance, but be careful what you ask for, because that's a lot of work. But I want to just share with you, I kind of had, the rates is the easy part that I had a chance to touch on. Joe helped me with that. But I want to recognize just for a moment, at a historic moment, Michael Weingart, who basically led the point on crafting this whole thing. That's no small challenge. It's basically kissed away 6 months of his life to leading the effort. But in addition to that, Ashley Bush was a huge part of that piece. And when I say huge parts, these are massive, it's countless hours they had to put into doing this. Chris Sims, I know, spent some quality time with the formatting of it and spent an entire weekend, literally the entire weekend doing it. I know Cody Morris was involved in it. Luke Miller was involved in it when you get into the construction pieces of it. Pam Shaw, our consultant, was a huge piece to that. Our interim attorney was also a piece of this too. Carolyn Shellman was a piece in helping us through this process. It took, and I know I'm going to miss people. There are a ton of other people who were involved in it, but it just shows you it took all these people countless hours to pull this thing together and to get it right. And we want to give a thanks to our retail electric providers who also gave us some consulting on it, because you remember they've been experts in this for 25 years. And we're just stepping into it. So we were able to get some dialogue with them. But I just want to give you that piece of it. I know that's kind of a lot, but it's critical. So much work went into it. And also the customer protection rules, so it's going to be the same for that as well. So what we're looking at for the tariff is, again, it governs the rates, the applicability of that, the billing process, the timing, the policy, all of that. So that is what we're bringing before the board today. That is more the complete document that's going to go for our entrance into the retail market. This will become effective when we make that transition into the marketplace. We had proposed a potential tentative timeline of March as a transition period. If all goes well and regulatory approval, we'll be making that transition in that month. So the tariff, this tariff will be the successor to our current tariff when customers make that transition from one tariff to the other. So I'll just pause there for a moment. Okay, go ahead.
Tom and Jenny had a huge hand in getting this done too, so I want to make sure we give a good shout out for them. Just having to format this thing, Tom, did you spend a little time on that?
More than a little.
More than a little. What we're asking for approval is sections 2 and 5. The rest of the pro forma is under the jurisdiction of the Public Utility Commission. So we have jurisdiction locally over sections 2 and 5, just so it's clear what it is that you're actually going to be approving.
So that started on page 70, it goes through page 275, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and sections 2 and 5 is what we're approving.
Yes, ma'am, that's what we have jurisdiction over.
Do I hear a motion to, the effect of approving 2 and 5 of that 100 and 200 page document?
Chair, I'll move that we approve the sections 2 and 5 of the delivery rate tariff.
Mr. Harmon seconded, Mr. Davis made the motion. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Passes 7-0. Now we go to
Customer protection rules. So for the second part of this is going to be the customer protection rules, or that's the PUCT substantive rules, chapter 25, subchapter R. That's quite a lot to say in one sentence. And basically this provides the minimum standards for electrical retail customer protections for our customers, provides transparency, non-discrimination on rates for providing service, protection against fraud, misleading information, and anti-competitive practices, customer information protection rules, as well as making sure that all the retail electric providers, and including where applicable, the TDUs, or transmission distribution utilities, to abiding to the terms and conditions of the service. This applies to, again, all of our reps and TDUs where applicable. This is a fairly substantial document. We've adopted a lot of the practices of existing utilities in this. What that means is, and I was kind of reminded about this morning, is what we've done effectively in our customer protection rules is really codified or documented what our existing procedures are. So really for us, there's very little change. It's just making us standard in the industry so that there's standard and uniform customer protections for all customers. So for us, there's not a lot of change for the way that Lubbock Power and Light will do our business. It's just basically now we've got it codified and systematized and documented, and it's consistent with all other utilities and the retail market providers. And so, what pages? I knew you were going to ask that. I do not have that.
It starts at 161.
Okay. 161, starts on page 161. Sorry, thank you. So we'd be looking for the board to adopt that or approve that. Any questions? I should stop and ask any questions. Correct, correct, yes.
Do we have any questions of Harvey? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt those customer protection rules on page 161. Is there a motion to that effect? So moved. Mr. Ramirez, is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Davis, second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It passes 7-0.
I'm just going to do I'll just do the kickoff, but Joe's going to have most all of it. Joe and his team have done all the work on this part. I'm just doing the introduction to it. So I'll have Joe in his fine-looking jacket come up here in just a moment here. So I just want to, we did have a Finance Review Committee meeting on this subject, and we covered in detail. So what you're going to receive today is going to be an appropriately abbreviated version of what was covered at the Finance Review Committee meeting. You're welcome to ask any questions. I just wanted to kick it off with what are going to be major themes that are important strategic themes in the budget. This budget supports operational safety and reliability, and that's going to be reflected by the capital investments that you'll see in our system. There are a number of upgrades we're looking to make in our 4 kVs to system, some legacy system to increase those and replace those. Looking to make conversions from our 69 kV inner loop to 115 kV. And then we're also looking to do some system cleanup from purchases of assets from Xcel Energy back in 2010. There's a lot of cleanup out there to do. So you'll notice that there's going to be about a $6 million increase in our capital budget from 18 million to or 19 million to 25 million. And that reflects that. The other thing is financial resiliency and sustainability. Those sound like nice glittering terms. Everybody always says financial resiliency and sustainability. What that means is we have strong cost management. We manage our risk appropriately, which means then, and that's going to be reflected in making sure our rates are adequate. We carry adequate reserves. We've talked about reserves before. We maintain strong, adequate reserves. And that means that we may not always know exactly what's over the horizon in a very changing environment and regulatory environment, and especially as we're entering into a completely different world as we make the transition and just being a transmission distribution utility. But whatever that is, we want to make sure we have the financial capacity and the protections in place to manage whatever lies ahead. So that's what we mean by reliability, resiliency. And then sustainability is our ability to maintain that. And that takes constant discipline. And that's where you're going to hear more about a term that we'll refer to as enterprise risk management. Managing our risks. What are the things that could occur that could harm us? What events could occur that could harm us? And that's where it's not scary things, it's just being prepared. And that's just looking at where are areas that we've got vulnerabilities, so you'll see that. That's the sustainability. And all of this comes down to keeping and maintaining affordable rates for our customers. Our control now will be on the delivery rates. We want to make sure that those are affordable, but we also want to make sure we have financial health, and that's covered in the second bullet point. And then the other part is customer value. What are the customers getting for those rates? In terms of the service level that they get, the reliability that they get, we want to make sure that our customers are getting that customer value at a cost-effective way. And so with that in mind, Joe will take it from there and show us how that plays out.
Thank you, Harvey.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate
Joe, and we have a new book from the 10th.
Yes, so I just want to make sure everybody has the new book. Again, that was the proposed draft that we presented. And so this is the final draft. But before I jump into my presentation, just wanted to thank all the board members here and the FRC for allowing us the opportunity to present to y'all last week. We really appreciate the questions and the responses and the engagement y'all have. One thing I wanted to say also is that, this budget, you know, it takes a lot of hard work. So I wanted to thank again the staff. Everybody in this room has played a role in presenting this budget, and we're happy to present you a balanced budget for fiscal year 23-24. So with that being said, again, and Harvey kind of hit on this, but we took a long time during the Finance Committee presentation. This is going to be a much higher level. I'm going to hit the higher point, so it's a lot less slides. But again, if you have any questions along the way, you want me to go into detail on anything, let me know, and I'll be happy to stop and answer any questions. Let's start off with financial model considerations. Again, so remember that our financial model, and this is on page 11 on your book. I'm sorry, you can't see this on the slide, but it's on page 11 of your book. One thing is, you know, we not only budget for next fiscal year, we budget for 5 years out. So you'll see the financial model estimates the revenues and expenses through fiscal year 28-29. Also in the budget is no anticipated base rate adjustments for our consumed meters. Again, that's the current base rates are effective, as Harvey mentioned. We'll have delivery rates hopefully by March 2024 when we move to the retail market. But for now, the current rates that are in place are the rates that we're proposing in this budget. So we haven't adjusted those since 2017. As he mentioned, we have a distribution system revenue, which is a new revenue stream that we'll collect once we enter the retail market. This is the revenue generated to cover all our O&M expenses, you know, as we move to a wires and poles company. So that's a new revenue stream, and you can see that line item is in. Let's see if I can see. I'm sorry. It should be in the yellow up there, so you can see that those are the new distribution system revenue line items. It also includes principal and interest for debt service related to the transmission build-out and distribution upgrades. If you remember, we invested about $400 million in our transmission infrastructure, and we just issued $60 million of debt for our distribution upgrades. So as Harvey mentioned again, we really have put money and investments into our infrastructure. You know, as we go to a poles and wires company, that's our main job. So we need to make sure that our infrastructure is good and reliable. We also increased the transmission cost of service revenues, and again, this is a filing still being in litigation through the works, going through the FERC process, but we intend for the T-cost revenues to go up about $2.4 million for next fiscal year. It also reduces capacity costs due to the early termination of the partial requirements contract. As we mentioned, we plan to transfer all our load, 100% of our load into ERCOT in December of later this year. And ERCOT's an energy-only market, so you'll no longer have capacity costs, but there is capacity costs built in our model for the 3 months that we will still be in SPS as anticipated, and that runs about $4.5 million. Also, it shifts competitive retail market. Again, as I mentioned, the budget is set that 100% of our customers move by March 2024. You know, this is the best estimate we have. There's litigation, there's FERC approvals and all that, but this is the targeted date that we had for this. One thing I'm proud to say is this budget, you know, so it's a 5-year plan. It incorporates 100% of cash-funded projects over the next 5 years. There's no anticipation of us issuing debt over the next 5 years. Of course, things can happen. There can be capital projects that, you know, become emergencies where we may have to, but right now the financial plan is that we're healthy and we don't have to issue any debt. It also reduces exposure to volatile purchase power costs. As I mentioned, you know, as y'all know, you know, purchase power costs are about 60% of our budget, so we're exiting that part of the business, and the reps will handle that moving forward, taking the energy costs, and we'll just maintain the infrastructure, the poles and the wires. It also includes a 3% cost of living adjustment. The city has implemented a 3% cost of living adjustment in their budget. Being the department of the city, we've implemented the same thing, 3% cost of living adjustment. And it's offset by a decrease of 19 FTEs. You know, as we transition to the retail market, we're finding more, we're repurposing some of our staff, you know, to do the workload that we need going into ERCOT. So we're adjusting as we go. You know, we're new to the market, so as we find out our deficiencies or any areas where we're lacking, we'll assign staff to that and repurpose from other departments to create those new staff members. If there's no questions on that, I'll go over. Yes, ma'am.
I had one question.
Okay.
On 3% COLA, is the city doing that like they did before, those at the lower end of the spectrum, or is it just 3% across the spectrum?
Yes, this is across the spectrum. They're not doing the 7% to 3% grade this year. It's a 3% across the board on that. Yes, ma'am. Good question. We'll go into our funding sources. As I mentioned, I won't dive into depth as I did during the the FRC meeting, but just wanted to kind of give you this pie chart to visualize where our revenues come from, you know. And as you know, this excludes purchase power costs. So as we transition to the retail market, you'll see that most of the revenue is going to come from the new distribution system revenue. And that's the fees that we'll charge for using our poles and wires. This revenue or this line item will be billed on the rep's bill. So the reps, our customers will go to a rep and will be a line item on the bill going forward. We no longer will bill our customers directly. They'll be billed to the reps, and then that revenue will be passed on to us. General consumer meters comes in about 31 million. That's the current base rates that we have that I mentioned that haven't increased. So, you know, we don't anticipate it going to March. So half of the year, we're going to get revenues from our old base rate stream. Our T-cost revenues is about 22.4 million. Again, as I mentioned, you know, we get about $44 million we're expecting $44.4 million in revenues. But as you remember, in order to go to ERCOT, we had to pay $110 million whole harmless payment, which is about $22 million annually. We'll keep paying that to January 2027, and after that, all the T-cost revenues will come back to the utility without that whole harmless payment. Our FFE is about 12.6 million. That's the franchise fee equivalent. That's passed on to the city, and that's based for the first half of the year. That's going to be based on 5% of our metered revenues, and after that, it changes to a % kilowatt hour. We have designated that we're going to transfer approximately about $13 million to the city annually, and that's just based on load. So it's a more relative stable stream for the city. You know, right now, 5% of your revenues, gas can go up, natural gas can go down, and so it's kind of hard for the city and us to project that revenue stream. But with it being based on load, there's only 1% to 2% growth annual or even decline. So it's a better revenue stream for the city, which will be approximately about $13 million going forward. And of course, the other funding sources round out about 5.8 million. Of those 5.8 million, 1.4 million is related to outside work orders. This is your development, your underground line extensions and costs like that. Our fees and charges are about 1.3 million. These are your late fees, your reconnect, disconnect fees. Again, this was about 3 million last year. It's gone to about 1.3. But again, the reps are going to handle those customers, so all those fees are going to be associated with the reps, and they'll collect that monies going forward. Transfers in is about $1.5 million. Interest earnings is about 1.2 million. That's just your investments of your bond funds in the investment pool, and you get a return on that. Sale of equipment rounds out about 200,000. That's just the sale of scrap vehicles or other equipment that we may have. And your rentals and recoveries is about 200,000. That's just your pole attachment fees. That's what we charge AT&T, Optimum, and all them for utilizing our poles and putting wires on there. I'm sorry, and I know I went over that pretty quick, but unless there's any questions, then we'll go over to the expense side of that. No questions? Okay, good. So in the operating expenses, again, this is the all excluding purchase power costs, because remember, purchase power costs are a pass-through cost. Whatever we pay for the energy, it's passed on directly to the customer. There's no markup, and that money, those revenues can only be used to pay purchase power bills. So we don't include these in our regular O&M expenses. But our expenses are capital related, about 63 million or 41.4%. That's the transfer of cash funded capital projects. We went from 19 million to about 26 million, so we're investing about $26 million of cash in CIP this year. And that also includes the debt service and interest on the bonds or the debt that we currently have. Your ERCOT transmission power costs are about 24.4 million, and this is nothing new. This was just always passed through the pass-through cost, the PCRF, the power cost recovery factor. But since we're no longer having the PCRF, this is automatically moved up to our operating expenses. However, this is collected in that delivery rate that I mentioned before. So your delivery rate already includes this transmission cost that we're paying in ERCOT and SPP. Your compensation is about 20.8 million. Your transfers out are about 17.1. That's pretty much FFE and pilot transfer to the city. Your professional services are about 10.1 million. And I won't go into each of these because we have some slides coming up that'll kind of break down what our professional services, compensation, and all that's at. So our compensation did decrease slightly from 20.8 million to 20.7 million. Again, full-time pay decreased about $500,000, but it's kind of offset by that 3% cost of living adjustment of $500,000. You know, I know we mentioned that we had a decrease of 19 FTEs in our budget, and you may be thinking that we should have more savings, but you remember that I mentioned that, you know, as we repurpose those positions. So as we have to become NERC compliant and in the ERCOT market, these are higher paid jobs. So you'll have some field service workers that were making approximately $40,000 going to a NERC certified person about $80,000. So it's really not a one-for-one match on that. So that's why there's not as much savings as you see on those. We repurpose those positions to higher paid positions that the utility needs. And then again, benefits increased about 8.7 million to 8.9 million. And this is pretty much just TMRS and health insurance. You know, the city is the one that negotiates those contracts, and we just pay a portion of that as the city does. Your professional services or your professional and training services went up from 9.5 million to 10.1 million. The driver of that is just your billing system, our CIS system. There's costs with that. You know, we have software that has contract escalators or, you know, software maintenance that, you know, we're dependent on these software programs, and it's kind of as those prices increase, we're kind of obligated to pay those prices. You just can't go out and find a whole new provider other than maybe Oracle or something like that. So we're kind of negotiated in these contracts, but we knew going into them they have contract escalators. You know how software increases, so those are the reasons for the increase. And also legal services, that's increased $250,000, and all that is just the ongoing litigation we have. You know, some of the delay in the transition to the ERCOT market or the retail market has also caused increases in costs in that department. Our scheduled charges, the main driver of this, scheduled charges decreased from 10.3 million to 7.1 million. The main driver of this is pretty much your property and liability insurance. If you remember last year, the city set up a negotiation with our insurance company where they prepaid 18 months. So we paid for 18 months last year for insurance costs versus just one year of costs for this budget season. So that's the big decrease on the cost. Utilities have also come down $460,000 as we phase out our production units. The production units use a lot of water and, you know, water costs to get those turbines running and vice versa. So those are the costs of the decrease on the utilities. And that's it for our expenses. Unless there's any questions, I'll go over to our PCRF.
Does anybody have any questions? I think,
okay.
Proceed, Joe.
Okay. Our power cost recovery, again, remember I mentioned that this was pretty much 2/3 of our budget, and this is the part of the business that we're really exiting. So again, as we stated, you know, that's probably one of the biggest reasons, not only for our customers to have choice, but also to exit that business. You know, that was the most volatile part of the business. That's you said we had a winter and summer rates, and so those are the rates we had to say constantly. Going forward, the reps will handle those rates, and we'll just have a delivery charge. So the main driver, again, is purchase power costs are $228 million to $101 million if you look at the actual PCRF. And that's just us projecting that we'll exit the market by March 2024. So April moving forward, all that energy will be handled by the reps, and the customers will pay the reps directly for that purchase power. Again, natural gas prices are another reason for the decrease in cost. Last year, natural gas prices were about 5.6 million, and we're projecting they're about 3.4 million. So when you're talking, you know, 200 million plus kWh, that natural gas has a real effect on our load. There's a breakdown of our purchase power costs. Again, the main driver is just us only budgeting for 6 months of purchase power costs. Our energy and fuel decreased from 180 million to 69 million. If you can see, transmission costs did go up. The main driver of transmission costs is also to mention there's a 1-year lag in SPP, in SPS for those costs. So the further we go in, delayed moving our load, we'll keep paying those transmission costs on a 1-year lag. And not only that, last year, you know, we anticipated going to the retail market in June, so we only had ERCOT transmission costs for 4 months. And this year, in this year's budget, we're projected to go in December or January, so you're going to have 9 months of transmission costs in ERCOT versus the 3 or 4 months that we had there last year. So that's the main driver of the increase in transmission. Again, capacity costs, that's strictly related to being in the SPP market. There's no capacity in ERCOT, but the 4.2 million is the estimated cost of us paying capacity costs while in the SPP market up till December 2023. Any questions on the PCRF or our power costs? Good, thank you. And one of the last ones is our fund level expenses. Again, this is our bottom line. This is our debt service. It decreased 2.06 million due to the payoff of some 2013 10-year revenue bonds, as well as some final payments made on the 16A GO refunding bonds in this fiscal year. Our indirect cost allocation did decrease about $600,000, and that's just due to the decrease in city administrative costs. We pay a portion of city attorney, city manager's department, and city council. So that's the payment due to us for operating those departments. Again, franchise fee decreased 2.28 million. And pilot decreased about 4.46 million. Again, our purchase power costs were the main driver of the big transfer last year, but now that those purchase power costs, so do the transfer to the city on that. And again, the transfer to capital is about 6.2 million higher than last year. We had some available cash this year to throw more at the capital project, so that's gone from about 19 million to about 25 million. And again, that's all cash funded. There's no debt issued in next year's capital program. Moving on to the capital program, you can see that, as I mentioned, about $25 million in projects. We have 18 total projects that we threw new monies to. And most of them are distribution related or annual maintenance projects on our current infrastructure. So you can see here our annual projects. We have our annual maintenance and vehicles as well that we repurpose or replace every year once they're old and inefficient vehicles. So the main driver of this, again, as I mentioned, it's going to be distribution work. And of course, we have a Smart Meter Texas and the work order system that costs us about 4.0 million. And that's just capital projects that we have to really implement once we're integrated into the ERCOT market. And again, like I mentioned, we don't just budget for 1 year. We budget the capital program all the way to fiscal year 28-29, and it averages about $32.4 million annually. Again, this is all cash funded. This is all cash funded CIP moving forward.
One question.
Yes, ma'am.
That one on the Smart Meter Texas, those dollars, that just happens this year once we're connected, or how does that work, that software?
It's going to be next April.
Yes, next April, but I think it's a one-time expense for Smart Meter Texas. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
So
ma'am.
once we're connected to Smart Meter Texas, we're done?
Yeah, so you may pay, an annual fee for the maintenance and programs like that, but it's not the big initial investment that we're throwing this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Again, so this is just a timeline of where we're at on the budget. I know I went through that pretty quickly at a high level, but again, this was presented to and recommended by the Finance Review Committee that was in depth, kind of in the weeds on that, so I wanted to keep it at a high level. That was done on July 10th. Today's July 18th. We brought it to the board for approval. So what the board does is they approve it and recommend it to the City Council for final approval. We'll go to the City Council work sessions to present a high-level budget to them on August 1st or through the 3rd, and then you'll have the first public hearing for the budget on September 5th. Then after that, the next day, you'll have the first reading of the budget, and then the second reading of the budget will be the following Tuesday on September 12th, which will be the final read of the budget and will be approved by City Council, and then it becomes effective October 1st. So with that being said, that's the budget presentation, and that's what y'all have before you to vote on to adopt the fiscal year 2023 proposed operating budget and recommend it to council for final approval.
Do board members have any questions of Joe? If not, then I
have
will.
one question. The other question, and we're losing our general counsel, so we have that budgeted in the 19 FTEs and those leaving and everything else to have that salary replaced. That's just staying in there until.
Correct. Yeah, you're correct. Yeah. So we did remove the pay grade from general counsel. That position still stays in the legal
That's not one
department.
of the ones. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions of Joe? I will now entertain a motion on 13 to adopt this operating budget and capital program and make that recommendation to the City Council. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Mr. Odom made the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Davis, second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion passes 7-0. And Joe, are you also on number 14?
Yes, ma'am.
We can't get enough of you today.
Yes. For your consideration also now is the proposed tariff and rate schedule. Again, as Harvey mentioned, you know, for this year as the transition year, we're going to have 2 rate tariffs that are effective for this fiscal year. Right now, the proposed rate tariff that's in your book, in your current budget book, is the effective rate that we have right now. So it's the current base rate that we have for our customers, which will be effective and then implemented until we transition to the retail market. There's no base rate increase for any classes, as I mentioned. There are a few changes that we did make, and they're minor. You know, we just added language to clarify that the current tariff is effective October 1st and will be effective until we transition to the retail market. And then another one is we updated the agreed payment arrangement for clarity and conciseness and discloses pretty much saying once we transition to the retail market, LPNL will not set up any payment plans with customers going forward because they're kind of not our customers. They belong to the rep now. And then lastly, we removed the budget billing, floodlights, and guard lights in there. I missed a bullet point, but we did adjust the PCRF language to include, to give us more of the general reserve policy related to the PCRF. So you can see that in your book. It is redlined, so you'll see last year's version compared to this year's version for your reference.
Right, and that's on page 57 in your book.
Yes, and it'll be...
replenish that fund balance that we're a little bit under.
Yes, ma'am,
right now.
correct.
Are there any questions of Joe? I'll entertain a motion to take action on this electric rate tariff schedule and recommend that to the council. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Mr. Schultz, second. Ms. Gambles, any more questions? All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you,
Good,
Joe.
thank you.
We appreciate it, and I
Yes,
appreciate
ma'am.
all the hard work and the corrections and spellings and little dots. It took a lot of work on this,
Yes.
so thank you.
Thank y'all for your help as well.
Matt, you've made it back, so we'll go back to number 9 on the agenda. You can tell us all the fun that happened in the legislature and
All
what
right.
they really did.
Do I just click all the way back here, Joe?
Back a little ways.
All right.
To number 9. It's number slide 7.
Sorry about this. I'll just say up front that it's one of the more interesting legislative sessions that I've seen. There was, in my past life working for the comptroller's office puts out the biennial revenue estimate, and there was always an argument of, is the legislature going to melt down because they've got too much money or too little money? And I think this shows that having too much money this session, they melted down. So that may be the solution. But yeah, it's funny because we ended the session with an impeached attorney general. For the first time in 100 years, had a House rep removed in the middle of a session. So it's just, and the Senate is still mad because they didn't get many of the things they wanted. So we'll see what they do in the coming months. But wanted to give you an update, since I couldn't be here last month, of just kind of a recap of the session. And obviously, if I did a full recap here, we'd be here for hours. And so I just tried to keep this very simple. But just to remind you up front that going into this session, we really had 2 items that we had to get passed. And we had to get those passed with the supermajority so that they could take effect immediately, so that our folks could continue doing their job and stay on the timeline that we had originally set out. And so the first one was Senate Bill 1170. And I'll say that Senator Perry and Carl Tepper both filed both of these bills on either side. And we used that method so that if one didn't gain traction, we had another one we could work off of. But Senate Bill 1170 was the vehicle for our first issue, which was just making sure that going forward, since we're not going to be a participant in the market, that while we've chosen default providers, provider of last resort, that going forward that the PUC would handle that as they do elsewhere in the competitive market. And that when we go into the market, clarifying in statute that customers will receive one consolidated bill with their electric service on it. So that was passed 29-0 in the Senate, 143-1 in the House, was signed into law by the governor on May 19th and took effect immediately because of the vote count. House Bill 2664 by Tepper was the one where we had to get ERCOT and the reps added to the list of exemptions. 2 sessions ago, for privacy measures, they said that municipally owned electric utilities basically shall not share any customer electric data except for these listed exemptions. Made sense at the time because there wasn't a muni necessarily contemplating going into the competitive market. But since we are, there's a mechanism where we have to share that information with ERCOT and the reps. And so we got those 2 listed. This one was a little tricky because anytime you deal with customer personal data, that's going to raise people's concern. But our representative did a really good job testifying on this and getting it through. It passed the Senate 31-0, House 147-0, signed on May 19th, and is now current law and statute.
Matt, just to make sure everybody understands, to get that kind of vote of 31-0 and 147-0 is highly unusual. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we had to, as you always do, there's a lot of education, a little hand-holding, but we had a really good team working through it. And as they've been every single session, our legislative delegation did a great job working with us, and their staff was phenomenal. So I put a lot of credit on them. Just in a very broad sense, grid reliability, obviously that's a topic of concern and will continue to be so. And there were several bills that addressed this. One thing I wanted to point out that we're still watching closely, and Texas Public Power Association that we work with is watching closely, is just the transparency of the gas market. So there were a lot of transparency gas bills that were out there that really didn't gain any traction. The gas entities were required after last session to weatherize their facilities, and so there's still work being done and conversations being had about how you go about making sure that the gas supply lines are stable. And so that continues, and in the interim session, that'll be a topic that'll be addressed, I'm sure, time and again, and they'll call the Railroad Commission in quite a bit. So market design, we've talked about before. The PUC embarked on a process to come up with a market design that incentivizes generation. They hired E3 to do that. And E3 came up with a proposal called a performance credit mechanism, which would provide payments to generators similar to a capacity market. On January 20th, the PUC issued an order indicating that they wanted to move forward with PCM subject to consideration by the legislature. Once we got into the session, this obviously became a huge topic, with people on one side saying we should have some capacity charge, folks on the other side we should have none, and then a bunch of people in between. So the 2 vehicles and bills that they put out there to make this work didn't really catch traction. So what ended up happening is that they ended up taking HB 1500, which is the sunset bill of the PUC. Every so many years, state agencies have to go through sunset review, and because it incorporates all of the business that they do, the sunset bill for the Public Utility Commission became the Christmas tree bill, if you will, for all of the various different items dealing with the performance credit mechanism, and at the end of the day, kind of gave tacit approval for the PCM. And so just very quickly, and this is a high-level overview of it, obviously HB 1500 is a big bill, but the bill went from 18 pages to 51 pages as they started adding all of these different elements related to the PCM into that bill. And basically what 1500 became was a bill that provided guardrails for the PCM. So just a couple items. When enacted, all elements of the performance credit mechanism shall be implemented on a single starting date. They capped it at $1 billion annually. And then, like I say, a lot of different aspects of just how this is run. And this will obviously go back to the Public Utility Commission, and they will likely continue working on this through rulemaking and other ways. But basically, this allowed them to move forward with this new concept of the performance credit mechanism. Let's see, I've got a couple more things on here. And I won't read through all of these, like I say. Basically what this is doing is just kind of putting in place a structure for it. And this was a culmination of a lot of different bills that were filed, but 2 in particular that were carried that became all of this language that got loaded in this other bill and passed.
And on that, go back to that.
Sure.
What is real-time co-optimization? What is that?
Joel? I'm not entirely sure, but
You'll follow up and.
I'll research and I'll throw it in this next
That
meeting.
was a new one. And then
Yes.
also ERCOT's going to be the clearing house, a
Yes.
single clearing
The
house.
ERCOT-wide clearing price will be used. And so again, I
You can find out and tell us next
yeah,
week. That's fine.
and I wanted to list all these out, and these are really just the high points. There's a lot of other points that they added in this bill, but really just showing you that what they were trying to do is basically say, you know, here are some guardrails, and then PUC, y'all continue building this out. So one thing I wanted to point out is, and the rest of these are just kind of interesting legislation, not ones that we have to go into detail on, but like last session, after Winter Storm Uri, they had the Buffett bill, which was basically Warren Buffett coming in, putting up about $8.5 billion. You build a power plant that's natural gas fueled. It sits off to the side outside of the market, and then there's like a 7-day supply of natural gas on site. So if you ever have another event, it can be run so that you don't get into that scarcity situation. This session, Schwartner brought a bill that looked a whole lot like that. It was 10,000 megawatts of gas fired for $10 billion. And the PUC could use the fund to provide loans for maintenance and modernization of existing plants. That did not pass. However, SB 2627 joined with SGR 93, which means it'll have to go to a vote of the citizens, did create a fund that is basically a loan fund, so that an MO user can qualify for it, but that you can go in and you can get Fed funds rates in municipal markets to build generation or maintain generation. So there was a bill passed that created money that can go towards this process. It just wasn't that safety net gas plant that was originally proposed.
Still about dispatchable generation.
Yes,
Is
that's
correct? So
the
it's
focus.
basically a loan program.
Yes.
And doesn't have the high ambition of the 10 billion. It's just lower, and it sets an interest rate that if people want to do that, they can.
And then you get completion bonuses if you hit your marks within a certain date and time frame. Again, trying to say that this is something that you can use, but if you can get this up and running and online sooner than later, there's an additional bonuses for doing so. Is how I've read it, and we'll see again. I think this, because if there's an SJR, has to go before the voters in November, but either way, there'll be rulemakings and things that will take place that will further clarify how this program will be run. Real quick, just kind of showing you some of the types of bills. Senator Johnson passed a bill that basically said if you have a cybersecurity incident that you've got to report that within 48 hours of the incident. Another interesting bill, it affects us in this area, also by Senator Johnson. Crypto mining, cryptocurrency miners have to register with the PUC as a flexible load if their total interruptible load is more than 75 megawatts. So you've seen news stories of Bitcoin mining facilities coming in this area that are 150 megawatts in these. A lot of them are offering up that there'll be interruptible load connected with wind farms and things. This bill was basically saying if you're higher than that 75 megawatts, you've got to register with the PUC, and there's restrictions or things that'll be put on you.
Are there many that fall into that category that have more than 75 megawatts that will have to register?
No, these are just cryptocurrency mining
I know, but
facilities.
those mines, are there a lot that meet that threshold?
They're very large loads. A lot of these ones that you've seen that have been going in are 100, 150 megawatt loads that are going in. And then I just thought this was interesting, and I need to read more into this, but Representative Guerin passed a bill that deals with transmission projects. So basically, if the bill requires PUC to consider projected electrical loads and considering whether to grant a CCN, as well as reducing the approval time to 180 days, whereas currently 1 year. We would have liked to have had that in place in 2018. Because if you'll remember in 2018, we filed it and it was like that year is what we were banking on. So this shortens the time frame for that decision. And then lastly, I'll just say that obviously we've launched into special sessions, but from everything we've heard, it's unlikely that electricity will be an item on those special sessions. I think, at least in the governor's mind, he thinks that this session did enough to advance the ball, and everything that's going through these special sessions seems to be far outside of us, but we'll continue to monitor the special session, the call sheets, the actions they take, just to make sure. But I think as of right now, we've got our slate of bills that have passed, and now we're moving on to the rulemaking stage. Going back to the very beginning, those two bills we passed, we haven't gotten any indication that there's going to be a rulemaking associated with them, but we'll see. Hopefully not, but if there is, we'll participate in it. But otherwise, these bigger bills, we're just watching to see what they do.
Great. Any questions of Matt? Thank you for the report and
Sure.
getting here and keeping up and doing such a nice job for us, Matt.
Sure. I think there's one other item really quick about APPA.
Pardon me?
About APPA? Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
He did tell a lot of stories about you while you were gone.
Uh-oh. I'm going to sit down now.
He won't repeat them to anybody else, though. On the, we passed everything and heard Matt's report on the consent agenda. I'd like to take number 16 off. Let's go ahead and do the consent item on the outside counsel to the settlement agreement for all of those claims. I'll hear a motion to approve that. Number 15.
So moved.
Mr. Odom makes the motion. Ms. Gamble seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those no. Pass 6-0. Will the record please note that Mr. Schultz left at 1:30? And then this one I would just like to bring up. It's about the Oracle extension. And it's like a $900,000 that we're having to do. Just a little briefing because we didn't transition when we wanted to. It's a $900,000 additional cost, I think, Clint.
It is. It is a $900,000 additional cost, mainly due to the result of us having to delay going into market. We were going in October 1. Now it's later than that, but anyway, we have the personnel. We wanted to keep them on board for sure from Oracle. We wanted to keep them at least with the project. So it's allowing us, what it's doing, that 4-month extension of $900,000 is allowing us to deploy other packages in CCS and getting ready for the market. It's allowing us to get fine-tune those programs, if I could say.
Okay, so once we get to market, we won't need this. Is that correct?
Well, once we get to market, right, this just during that period of time.
This is a stopgap.
That's correct.
Correct, okay. Any other questions? All those need a motion to accept that.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Davis, Mr. Harville seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Passes 6-0. And just a bittersweet, Joel, did you want to mention about our council?
I think I was going to go exactly where you were going to go. Just on behalf of the team here at Lubbock Power and Light, I'd really like to say, Jenny Smith, thank you very much for all the contributions you've made. This has been one heck of a ride, and I've only been here a year. She's been here 4, so she's seen a whole lot more than I have. And you've made a lasting impact, and good friends and good colleagues and whatnot. So we wish you nothing but the best. So thank you for everything you've done on behalf of LP&L, Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
And I have one as well, Ms. Stafford. I know I mentioned to the FRC about Tanika Williams. She officially put in her resignation. So July 28th will be her last day with Lubbock Power and Light. as her family transitions to the Metroplex area. So I wanted to tell her thank you personally from us and all the staff she's helped with. We'll really miss her, but we wish her the best in her endeavors going forward.
And she's going to the Metroplex, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
We'll miss you, and thank you for keeping Joe in line for us.
Yes.
It's bittersweet.
Tanika Thomas. Sorry, I apologize. Tanika Thomas.
Thank
She
you.
got married on me while she was here, so I still use her maiden name. So, yeah, sorry about that. That's it.
Thank you, Joe. Again, Jenny, thank you for your devotion and dedication and all your hard work. You still can't go until 5 o'clock. But Carolyn, you are at 5 o'clock. You're it. And you've got some big shoes to fill, and I know you will. And we thank you for being here. And Joel, anything else to come before this board? No, ma'am. Then your favorite part, this meeting is adjourned.